you today. I was reviewing my training diaries from years ago and also the Nike website, and I came across a pair of shoes called the Nike Air Zoom Alphas on the Nike website, which looked like which were a retro 1996 shoe. The first shoe apparently to have the full-length Air Zoom unit, a bit like they do in the Pegasus, at least until the Pegasus 36. I think the 37 is going to have React. So I was kind of intrigued by them, so they kind of looked familiar. When I looked through my training diaries, I did pick up a pair of these the first time round. I got a pair in May 1997. I'd just gone through a period when I've been using New Balance for ages. There was a shoe called the 850 in their MBX type material at the time, which was a shoe I really loved. It was sort of a racer trainer type affair. I used to do sort of long track sessions in it, sort of fast runs, any sort of runs really, apart from when I was sort of doing my track races, 8s and 15s in those days. So I was really curious to see how these shoes compared to what I've remembered before. So I managed to pick up a pair for about 50 quid from a website called Consortium, who were doing a deal with them. I had to get a UK 12, which, funny enough, back in the day I actually got a UK 11. And I subsequently picked up a second pair a few months later in a 12. So this 12, I think, is basically the exact same colorway that I had before. I haven't got any pictures of my time with them from that time. I think I was very shy in those days, and I thought just having my picture taken, let alone sitting in front of a camera doing a YouTube video, wouldn't really have appealed. So I was just curious to show you how they feel now compared to modern day shoes. So I've been out for a few runs in them. I've done about 20 miles in sort of a marathon pace type tempo for a couple of miles, a sort of a longer sort of steady pace, just under sort of 8-minute miling. The first thing you notice is that they're really heavy. These are 390 grams in a UK 12. Now, if you compare that to shoes which are hardly really lightweight ones, like got the Nova Blasts in a 13 from Asics, they're 340. Also, the New Balance 1080 V10s are also in a UK 13.5. They're also 340 grams. Now, probably the one shoe that perhaps is the modern day equivalent of this shoe is probably the Turbo 2 here. And the Turbo 2s, they're about 280 grams. And just picking these two shoes up, they just feel, you can feel the 100-gram difference in the old one. So why were they so heavy? Well, the first thing you notice about the shoes of this era is that there's so much leather on them. So the whole eyelet tongue there is like leather, and then there's leather at the top, and then there's leather down the sides around the heel cup as well. So there's so much more weight of them from that aspect. And if I actually look closely at a modern day shoe, it's just like a one-piece construction for the for everything holding it together, and around here, but just quite a very thin tongue. Whereas on the Air Zoom Alphas, that's quite a cushioned tongue. There's a lot of padding under there. And you feel like, in a way, it's quite good though, because you feel quite locked in. And the Air Zoom unit was quite revolutionary at the time. It feels quite sort of harsh nowadays. So I think the Air Zoom unit is this sort of yellow thing here that goes underneath. It goes on the whole way apparently. And although they do have this rather odd sort of aggressive sort of rubber lugs on here, so it's sort of a shoe that, although I've been using it on the road around Claygate where I live, you probably could get out on the trails with these. But I think all this stuff here adds to the weight, and all this obviously all this padding here as well. But the one thing I did notice about these shoes is that they are quite narrow. If you compare them to the Turbos, I don't know if you can actually see that on that, but they're definitely a lot narrower. And in fact, when I compared these two, say, they're about the same width as the Vaporflies, and they're a lot narrower than, say, the Nova Blasts and the 1080 V10s. So in that sense, they actually feel, when I actually did a few sprints in them, I actually felt they were reasonably responsive, because you didn't get that sort of sinking feeling that I get with some of the more modern cushion shoes, especially something like the Nova Blast. I tried to sprint in that the other day, and it was really quite hard work. But what I did notice also is the comfort of these things are a bit suspect. I think maybe because this is perhaps a fraction short for me now, although this shoe does come up longer than I sort of remembered compared to, say, the 12 I've got in the 4%. This does have a bit more room at the front. But certainly had a bit of rubbing on my Achilles at the back here, even though that's quite a low one if you there compared to the sort of the flared up heel these days. And it was sort of digging into a bit after a while. I thought that if I'd wear these for much longer, I've got blisters. But you can just sort of feel the material is much more sort of harsher now than the old days, even though there's a bit more padding. It's got a sort of just the standard insole, which feels quite heavy, but there's a bit of cushioning on that. But when I was running them, you kind of feel like it's like a slap feeling each stride, especially at sort of like more sort of casual paces. And you could definitely feel that extra weight. But I think when I've been wearing them a bit, I sort of got more used to them. And I did a few little hill sprints for Strava segments, and once I got going, there was actually I actually got up to a reasonable speed. So in some ways, even though they're really heavy, it was actually kind of easier to run fast, very fast. I mean, I'm not talking about sort of doing long marathon pace tempos. We're talking about flat out sprinting than it was in perhaps some of the more cushioned shoes like the Nova Blast and the 1080 V10. I think just because those shoes have quite a sinking feeling to me, whereas because it's quite firm, it just sort of gave you that sort of feeling that you weren't sinking, you were sort of bouncing off the road a bit, but in a sort of a harsh sort of way. And you kind of thought if I wore these for too much longer, I might be starting to pick up blisters on my back of my heel and stuff like that. So I certainly probably will continue to wear these for the odd run, but amazing how much the technology has come on in the 24 years since these first came out. Now, so as I said, I had two pairs of these. The next pair of shoes I had, or not long after, was the Air Zoom Talarias. That's another pair that they've recently had a reintroduction of. Didn't manage to pick up a pair of them that time around. I think you can get them on StockX for an exorbitant price. But I remember I said it in my training notes that they felt a lot softer than these. So this was obviously a bit of a sort of a tryout shoe from Nike. And after the Talarias, I think I only had one pair of them. I noticed I went back to the next iteration of the New Balance, which was called the New Balance 851, which actually, I'll throw up a picture of the 851 that I found on the internet, and that actually looks very similar to this sort of style of shoe. I then proceeded to have 7 pairs of the New Balance one, and I think then after that I started to move back to Nike again. I think I went back to the Zoom Elite, I think in sort of early sort of 2000s. I'll have to do another video where I sort of find all my old shoes and give you a rundown over the years. So I thought that would be of vague interest for the historians amongst us, and to see what sort of shoes were like 20-25 years ago. I mean, in some sense not that much different, just a bit heavier, lot more sort of to the construction, but in a way that kind of helps. It did, especially with me and my narrow foot, it did actually help to sort of get that lockdown across the top here. And in those days, I think clearly my feet were effectively a bit smaller, and I could probably easily fit into a 12, because I even got an 11, as I said, in these ones. Whereas now, really, I could perhaps do with at least half a size more in this one. That's probably why I won't want to wear them too much, because of all the rubbing. So I hope you found that interesting, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Okay, bye!